The audience erupted in a standing ovation. The maestro, elegant and poised, took a deep bow, lowering his baton. For a few perfect seconds, everything was as it should be. The soaring violins, the dazzling stage lights, the pride beaming from the faces in the crowd. But then, in a shadowed corner of the stage, 3 men crumpled to their knees, gasping, their faces contorted in agony. The applause died. The murmuring transformed into screams. From his podium, the maestro surveyed the unfolding chaos, a faint smile playing on his lips. He whispered, his voice carrying an unsettling calm, that this was finally the right music for this night. He knew this was no accident. This was the culmination of a plan, meticulously crafted, 17 years in the making. His name was Adriano Meirelles. A classical pianist, a prodigy, he was trained at the prestigious Vienna Conservatory. At 27, he was at the zenith of his career, enjoying sold-out concerts, critical acclaim, and a future as brilliant as the stage lights that once illuminated him. Until one rainy night, his world shattered. He was accused of murdering an influential investor, a key patron of the very orchestra he graced. Witnesses swore they saw him leaving the dressing room, a knife in his hand. The knife bore his fingerprints. The victim's blood stained its blade. The trial was swift. The verdict, 25 years. He served 17 long years before finally proving the primary witness had lied. A hidden dossier revealed the true killer, Alcides Brandão, the orchestra's current conductor, aided by 2 accomplices, the financial director and the first violinist. When Adriano walked out of prison, he was no longer the same man. His hands, once agile on the keys, were calloused. The vibrant smile had vanished. But deep within him, something had never died: his profound love for music and an unyielding thirst for justice. For months, Adriano lived like a ghost. He avoided the press, shunned former colleagues, and resided in a modest apartment downtown. But at night, seated at his piano, he composed pieces, each note laden with a hidden meaning. Simultaneously, he immersed himself in the study of chemistry and sound engineering. He even volunteered to assist with the orchestra's equipment maintenance, a thankless job no one else wanted. Slowly, he began to circulate backstage, an invisible presence to his former tormentors, who believed he was merely moving on from the past. They had no idea that every wire replaced, every cable rerouted, every subtle modification to the instruments was part of something far grander, something that demanded absolute precision. The plan began with a deceptively simple idea. The poison did not need to be in the food if it could be in the air. Adriano ingeniously adapted microcompressors, discreetly embedding them into the violin stands and the conductor's podium. These devices were then meticulously wired into the stage lighting system, which he himself had overhauled. By activating a specific combination of lights, imperceptible to the audience, the compressors would release a colorless, odorless, fast-acting gas, precisely directed only at those seated in that exact row on stage. For this to work, he needed the culprits in the right seats. And that is where the second part of his plan came into play. He convinced a prominent sponsor to commission a brand new piece, one he himself would conduct, as a supposed act of reconciliation with the orchestra. No one suspected a thing. After all, what better way to bury the past than to return to the stage? The grand day arrived. The theater was packed with politicians, businessmen, critics, and classical music aficionados. It was Adriano's first performance in 17 years, and the press had dubbed it the Night of Redemption. In his dressing room, he slowly adjusted his tuxedo, gazing at his reflection in the mirror. His eyes were steady. His hands, despite years away from the stage, were firm. As the crew performed their final sound checks, Adriano personally inspected the conductor's podium and the instruments of the 3 men. He greeted each of them with a prolonged handshake, a gesture that seemed like reconciliation. In truth, it was merely confirmation. They were all seated exactly where he wanted them. The lights dimmed. A profound silence enveloped the theater. Adriano ascended the podium, took a deep breath, and raised his batuta. The orchestra began to play Symphony of Justice, a composition he had written during his time in prison. The opening movements were soft, almost hypnotic. The audience was captivated. And then, in the third movement, came the pivotal moment, a dissonant chord, followed by a rapid sequence of notes known only to him, the precise code for the light technician. The stage lights shifted tone for a mere 0.7 seconds. No one in the audience noticed, except for the hidden sensors in the pedestals and violin supports. The microcompressors sprang into action. A nearly invisible gas began to seep out, directly targeting Maestro Alcides and his two accomplices. They continued to play for a few more instants, but soon they began to sweat, to cough, to tremble. The audience initially thought it was part of the intense interpretation, but when the maestro dropped his batuta and collapsed, the music was swallowed by a wave of panic. In the midst of the chaos, Adriano made a final gesture for the orchestra to stop. He lowered his batuta, looked down at the three men on the floor, and said, in a tone only they would hear, "Now you know what it is like to lose your air." He left the stage, walking slowly, as screams echoed through the theater. The police would arrive in minutes, but they would find nothing but seemingly ordinary cables and instrument supports. The theater was empty, chairs askew. The stage, a silent field of scattered sheet music. Among them, the Symphony of Justice, stained by a single drop of sweat that had fallen from the maestro's brow before he tumbled. Outside, Adriano walked slowly down the wet street, passing beneath the yellow glow of the streetlights. He paused, closed his eyes, and moved his hands in the air as if still conducting a brief, almost imperceptible gesture. He mused that in music, every note has its time. Today, their time ran out.